All right. Okay, amigos, welcome to week four, module four uh, of our 6 week prosperity plan. So this one is, if I had to pick one, it's perhaps one of my favorites. It's one of the things that originally got me super pumped and intrigued and excited, fascinated about this game and this journey is how to how to grow, you know, our our harvest, and from the seeds that we collect from earning and saving and through other ways, of course. So today is all about multiply, how to multiply our money, aka how to invest, how to grow um, what we have, what we've been blessed and fortunate enough to be trusted stewards of. So, you know, um, education, it comes from execution, and results come from action. So, if we wait for everything to be just right, we may never move forward. And we're going to be, you're going to be scared or either way. So we might as well take massive imperfect action, and that will give you the thick skin that you'll need to succeed in the long run. So we're never going to be ready enough, but we go when we're ready enough. There's never that perfect amount. Um, so it's progress over perfection. The key is to stick into the principles that I'm going to go over with y'all. Today I'll share some of my lessons and lessons. You know, but if any of us can improve our financial knowledge, right? I'm sure you believe that you can improve your financial knowledge and skills by 10%. Could you even double them? How about 10x? If you believe that's possible, because we you've probably done something at one point in your life that maybe you thought you couldn't, and the main thing stopping us isn't lack of skill set. Oftentimes, it's lack of mindset and then skill set. So it's a blended. This whole program is a blended cocktail, potent cocktail of both of those because they're so important, right? And you'll see why. Okay. All right. So let's keep cruising. Uh, as always, right? This training is for information purposes only. It's not legal, financial, or professional advice. You guys know I'm not an attorney, I'm not an accountant, CPA, financial advisor, none of that. I am simply a practitioner of these principles and practices that I share with you. That's where I come from. Because everyone's situation is truly different, especially when it comes to tax and legal. That's why I share this message with y'all. Before you pull the trigger and make any decisions, you know, you may want to consider seeking professional advice, based on your circumstances. Because advice, the key with the word advice is it's always adapted to the individual and their personal circumstances, right? So in no way could we create a training that was all encompassing and all inclusive to apply to all parties and all students, right? So that's kind of the message there. All right, so today we are focusing on multiplying massively, how to multiply our money. All right, it's week four, step four on our way up the prosperity pyramid. All right, so just a quick recap for myself. Okay, you guys know my story probably more than most that are on the call, but for those that don't, very humble beginnings. I was always looking for a better way. I learned mostly what not to do growing up, and I was always seeking opportunities. Um, you know, and at 18 years old, thankfully, I had a good friend of mine. Before I joined the Navy, he was like a Merrill Lynch prodigy. Okay, so at the time, that firm was the largest brokerage, meaning an investment firm on planet Earth. Okay, in the late 90s, early 2000s. Um, and I thought I was doing all the right things. I had multiple accounts with them. I had a Roth IRA and I had what's called a CMA account, which was basically just a general brokerage account, but I had checkbook access to it, so it was really cool. Had a debit card, and I was doing all the right things that I thought, pumping money into um, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, And I didn't even, when I met Brandy, you guys may get a kick out of this. When I met Brandy, I didn't even have a car or a cell phone. That's how frugal I was in the early 2000s when I joined the Navy, because I was pushing money into all my accounts, living in the barracks, eating all the free food I could in the Navy, and also sending some money home to help my mom and sister. So that's the reality. That's my roots. Kind of a quick recap into my adulthood, into the investing world. Okay, and here's what happened. Uh, in the late 90s, so quite literally right here where the cursor is, from 97 to 99 into the early 2000s, I was buying into this big wave, right? Stocks, bonds, mutual funds. Okay. And then what happened is I joined the Navy in March of 2000, right about here. And little did I know, because I'm going through boot camp and all my training and stuff, and stock market's all bouncing around here. And then I met Brandy here, and then I become a dad right here. So if you look back at, this is what they call the dot-com bubble, the tech wreck, right? So I'm buying in all the way up into here where the green arrow is, and then I become a dad and a husband right here. So I'm looking back saying, what in the world just happened, and I thought I was doing all the right things. And I mean, you guys can see that number, right? So we went from like 4,500, 5,000, okay, down to 1,500. That is an epic crash, right? Like everything, not only what I had put into it, not all my gains were gone, but also like a lot of my principal just got whacked, right? So I had to figure out, okay, I'm along for this ride and slide. What can I do, right? So just like you guys saw on our first time together, it ignited the crusade in me. Okay, so I was going to find a better way. These are the questions I asked myself: what the heck just happened? Why did it happen? And I need to be able to prevent it and avoid it from ever happening again. Okay, so here's some foundations and prereqs for success, right? Um, you can only say yes to investment opportunities that align with your mindset first, skill set, and then your tool set, right? And at one point in life, you didn't know how to walk, talk, or count, or write, or read. But now look at you, right? Look at what we're capable of. And we're all parents on the call. Most of us are in the program. If not, maybe you got nieces and nephews and stuff. Um, you know, it doesn't stop at childhood, right? The rapid transformative growth and improvement can happen at any age, really. As long as we're willing to put the work in, starting with our mindset, then working on our skill set, and then acquiring the tool set. So, there may be things, this is my favorite one right here. There may be things that you don't want to learn, but there's nothing that you can't learn, right? So, okay, what's the most important financial skill, right? Well, it's financial literacy. We covered what that is. Literacy is simply the ability to read and write, which is knowledge of a particular subject or a particular type of knowledge, okay? So, meaning financial literacy is simply the language, the math in words, right? The numbers in words of money, right? Finances, economics, all that. Okay, so here is what wealth is, I think. One of the ways to look at it is when small efforts produce big results. Poverty is when big efforts produce small results. So this is another way of thinking about working smarter, versus working harder. And it's easy to go through life brute force and work our tails off for decades, 20, 30, 40 plus years. But if we don't have a plan, and then there's no strategy, and there's no, real intelligent approach, then, we can find ourselves working hard for decades only to come up short, because there's just a couple little tweaks to make along the way. And, I think that it's amazing what's possible. All right. And that's what we're going to cover today. So another way to say it is, complaint is poverty, right? So Here's our first thought bomb of the day. Your number one all-time most valuable and important investment is in you, yourself. Okay? You are your most valuable and important investment. And that is the whole purpose of this program, and why I'm so delighted to have you great folks, along for the ride with us, is because I have the opportunity to pay it forward and pour into you, knowing that you are the most important investment and valuable investment you're ever going to make. So that's why I get so excited about this, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity. And it's just fun. It's really fun. Okay, so a quick mindset review. So our mindset controls our bank account, right? The biggest difference between the rich and the poor is how they think. The rich believe wealth is possible and accessible, so they pursue it. But the poor believe wealth is for other people, quote, other people, so they stay stuck. They stay dependent. They perpetuate the poverty cycle, which begins with the mindset, right? Guess what? Good news is you don't need to be the smartest, just the most consistent. Okay? The most consistent that works on our mindset, the most consistent that works on our skill set, the most consistent that eventually the tool set to build whatever you want to build and create. Millionaires, billionaires aren't always the smartest, but they are the most consistent because we're going to cover a very important concept today, the power of compounding. And here's the thing, going back to you being the most valuable and important investment you ever make. Here's the thing, my friends, nothing compounds like consistency. Nothing. So that's why millionaires and billionaires aren't always the smartest, but they are the most consistent because they recognize the power of compounding beginning with themselves. So, that's why showing up, investing, learning, and improving every single day in some way, big or small, right? Small actions repeated over time absolutely create massive results. Okay. I'm living proof of that, but I didn't invent any of this stuff. Okay. I just followed, those before me, past and present, and standing on the shoulders of giants. Okay. So, yes, mindset is the single most important factor that determines your success at anything and everything in life. Okay. So let's define success real quick. Success is really nothing more than the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. It's the best definition I've ever found by the legend Earl Nightingale. Success really nothing more than the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. So any person who knows what they're doing, where they're going, why they're going there, right, is any person with a goal towards which they're working is a successful person, right? It's beautiful. Okay, couple definitions because we're going to reference these and I want to make sure we're all on the same page. So winner versus loser and losing. All right. So a winner is someone who earns their success daily, right? And a loser is someone who gives up on their dreams, squandering their resources and God-given potential. Fair enough? What do you guys think of those two definitions? Does that make sense? I think this is where winning and fulfillment is found here at the top. And then if we're going to be unfulfilled and ultimately slide into some form of suffering if we squander and quit, right? So this is something to study for future reference, but I want to bring it up here. It's something I've made for my team years ago, a model that I kind of mapped out. I call it the success pyramid. It's with the context of business and financial, of course, because that's kind of the theme of our program here. But the foundation is our character, right? What is our character? It's who we are, right? It's our beliefs, values, habits. That's the intangible. And then everything else is the tangible side. So like the next one is clock and calendar, right? Where do we allocate our attention and energy, aka that's actually what commitment is, right? Commitment is allocating energy and attention and our in the form of clock and calendar, right? Time. Next tier is competency, right? What do you know? Um, and then next is above that is contacts. Who do you know? right? Then we get into cash flow, meaning what you earn, what's your income, um, potential or sources, current sources. And then credit, of course, is your borrowing power. And then finally, there is cash, right? So, future reference, check it out down the road. Just a little model to help kind of think through these things. Okay, because that's the order of actually applying this program um, is, and especially when it comes to business and financial success. Okay, think in that hierarchy from the bottom up. All right. So programming and paradigms. What's a paradigm? Well, a paradigm is how you view the world, your beliefs. So it's how someone sees reality, themselves, others, and everything else. Why are they important? Because the quickest way to change or improve behavior is to shift our paradigm. If you want to change where you're at, it starts with shifting your paradigm, right? So, um, meaning a lot of people think that, you know, when it comes to like investment returns, that, it's all about stocks, bonds, mutual funds, handing everything over to Wall Street, financial advisors, uh, you know, go to, go to the bank for stuff, go, all these other kind of things that society told us, to do, the institutions of investing, the governments, the corporations, Wall Street, all that. Whereas what you'll find is the reality is the most prosperous people um, do not um, subscribe or stay stuck in that system. It's broken and flawed. All right, so here's some influences to think about. That's another big piece to paradigms. Programming and paradigms is it's not your fault where you start in life, but it is your fault where you end up. Right? That's free will. Um, we should always remain conscious of our environment, so our circumstances do not make the human, but it does reveal him to himself. Right? Um, and what we put into our head, our eyes and ears, intellectually um, have. So what we feed our head, right, through our eyes and ears, um, absolutely has undeniable, unavoidable, intellectual, meaning mental and emotional consequences, right? It's very important. And then what we put in our mouth, nutrition, right, um, obviously has the same unavoidable um, physical and emotional consequences. Both of these are for better or for worse, right? So garbage in, garbage out, good in, good out. It's that simple. Okay. 3 common denominators for lifetime success. Number one, take complete responsibility for their lives. This is what I've learned um, with myself and studying other great successful people. These are the 3 common denominators. Is one, they take 100% complete responsibility for their lives. Number two, um, is they keep a long-term perspective. It's part of their legacy. There's an amazing video here that I'll post in the our community for y'all to watch. It's wonderful. It's about 10 minutes long. I won't play it today, but it's incredible. And then number three is delayed gratification, right? Um, so, okay, here's the good news. The good news is we are where we are and what we are because of what has gone into our minds. And guess what, though? You can change what you are and where you are by changing what goes into your mind. In other words, our thinking directly affects our performance. And if we change the input, we can change the output. And that's why we're here today, right? So, again, another thing about programming and paradigms, it's so important because we've all had, for better or worse, habits, influences, programming that um, we see the world of finance, money, and investing. Today's focus is investing, how to multiply and grow um, our money. We have to think about how did we arrive at how we see that? What are those based on? Okay, and are we willing and able to change the way we look at those things so that the things we look at change, right? So paradigms are about perspective, right? AKA seek and you shall find, right? If we're not looking for it because we don't believe it's possible, um, you know, we're never going to find it. That's for sure. So limiting beliefs, what's holding you back, right? Um, is it a lack of clarity of purpose and priorities, aka your values? Is it a lack of commitment, simply the will to do it? Is it a lack of confidence? And confidence ultimately is rooted in, comes from competence, meaning knowing your skill. Or is it a lack of courage? Again, going back to will, character attributes. We all go through struggles, obviously, through life with the four of these. And kind of like what do they say in the 12-step program, AA, like the first step of change or progress is acknowledgement. We have to recognize, what am I struggling with in this season of life? Which of these four kind of hit me in the feels, as the young generation would say, and work on that, and with your family and your trusted advisors and confidants. When we do the one-on-ones, my friends, which everybody gets, two each. We're going to deep dive in part of this stuff, and help uncover what's holding us back. That's a very personal thing. It's not right or wrong. I've dealt with everything. That's how I can relate and share this and teach this with you, with all humility, but also with, hope of the power and the progress and the change that can come from overcoming them and working through them. Okay. So, um, you know, here's the thing about these four. In my observation and experience, these four are the rarest combination in society. Most people don't have these four, and it holds them back, right? It really does. Like, for example, clarity of purpose. We must have an invincible desire towards your dreams. If you don't have a deep, burning desire, okay, and it's clear, a clear purpose, you won't do it. You're going to stay comfortable. You're going to stay where you're at and where you've been most of your life. Um, when it comes to, commitment, right? What does that look like? That looks like clock, calendar, character. 80% um, is really what it looks like. When we talk about, you know, confidence comes from competence. Well, it's a choice, right? We all have free will. We get to decide daily to sharpen our skills or let the tools of our mind get rusty and sticky, and dull and rusty. So one of my favorite little sayings when it comes to that is feed your head, make some bread, right? Um, and then courage. If you have a big enough why, you will muster the courage. You will find a way and make it happen. Okay. Okay. So what do you value most? And would you rather look good and lose or look bad and win? Right. It's one of my favorite sayings from the old White Man Can't Jump movie. Some people they're more preoccupied with the perception of strangers or friends and family than they are with their own progress and uh, overcoming the pain. The pain of perception, others, people's reception, they succumb to that. That takes the overwhelming, dominant, control, vice, ignoring that and staying true to yourself and pursuing your potential, your God given potential to serve more, earn more, and share and give more, in this life. So, limiting beliefs. Our success is not determined by the market, mommy and daddy, the government, your employer or your boss, or this is a term my kids came up with when they were in elementary school, meanie butthead, someone that's not very pleasant. like if they have a yucky attitude, or some other meanie butthead, sibling, schoolmate, or coworker, right? Thankfully, our success is not determined by any of these, okay? But our success is determined by our mindset, okay? Mindset first, it's the foundation. Then, because we have to, as we approach each of these levels, in this six level program, how we approach it, our attitude, our mindset, and what we think about it, it matters. It just matters. And if we trivialize it, or we're intimidated by it, or so can we be excited and optimistic about it, or we pessimistic, closed-minded, scarcity, right? So this is the prerequisite to each of these. So what you think about, guess what? You'll be about. Period. End of story. That's how God made it. That's how the way the world works. A human is literally what he thinks. His character being the complete sum of all his thoughts. So what you think about, you will be about, and what you believe, you will achieve, for better or for worse, right? Here's another way to look at it. Second thought bomb of the day. What you're not changing, you are choosing. That's fire. That's one that hit me a while back, and I love sharing that one. What we're not changing, we are choosing. All right? Amen. Let's keep going. Last couple thoughts on limiting beliefs. Thoughts are things. One of them being your compass through life. Good thoughts bear good fruit. Bad thoughts bear bad fruit. Scarcity thoughts, guess what? Bear scarcity results. Okay? Courageous, bold, calculated action creates what? Bold, abundant results. Okay? Everything is and has been created twice. Once in the head, second by the hand. Some causes of scarcity, to the effect it has on people's attitudes. The more security you need, the more scarcity there is in your life. So if we are seeking security, guess what? We're actually seeking scarcity. Or if we're preoccupied or distracted by competitiveness, competing, then guess what? The more scarcity there is going to be in our life. It's why people compete for jobs and promotions at work, compete for grades in school, compete in sports. Ultimately, does that really even matter and align with our values and what matters? The results, the actual desired outcome, the destinations that we're trying to arrive at. Probably not. It's a distraction. It's just somewhere between a distraction and deception that comes from society. So people that are preoccupied with competition, guess what? Yeah, they're actually just succumbing to scarcity. But the good news is the people who are creative, cooperative, collaborative, and have good financial literacy in business schools enjoy lives of financial abundance. Thankfully, that's the good news. All right, now let's compare passive versus active, scarcity versus abundance. Okay, so there is two major approaches and mindsets when it comes to investing and multiplying your money, right? They're parallel to what we talked about from a mindset and then a skill set and habits. Okay, so here they are. On the left hand side, we're going to go over passive investors, aka a scarcity mindset. And then we're also going to look on the right hand side, the active investor, the abundant mindset. So passive investors typically have a victim mindset. Active investors have a victor spirit. Passive investors are focused on obstacles. Active investors are focused on opportunities. Passive investors are focused on burdens. Active investors focused on blessings. Passive investors seeking sympathy. Active investors seeking strength. Passive investors seeking excuses. Active investors seeking progress. Passive investors tell themselves, I can't. Active investors tell themselves and ask the question, how can I? Passive investors are reactive. Active investors are proactive. Passive investors are drifting. at the whim and mercy of the world. You know what that looks like. If we are of the world and the world is, you know, influencing us and pushing us around, drifting through life. Active investors are deliberate, aka intentional. Passive investors are gripeful, full of gripes. And then active investors are grateful. They recognize the abundant blessings and opportunities in this life. Passive investors are whiners, the habit of whining and being a whiner. Active investors are winners, focus on winning, serving others, earning more, and sharing with more others. All right. Passive investors are worriers, preoccupied, again, allocating their attention and energy to worrying, whereas active investors are warriors, fighting the good fight, the right things for the right reasons. Passive investors, again, preoccupied with competing, competition. Active investors are obsessed and recognize the power of collaboration. Passive investors hoard. Active investors are generous. Passive investors fear change. Active investors own and embrace change because that's where progress is made, right? Passive investors avoids risk. Active investors takes prudent, projected, and calculated risk. And passive investors dwell in doubt. Active investors are determined, right? Here's the thing. It's not how much you have, it's what you do with what you have. Everybody who's achieved anything in life has made the most of what they have, right? And didn't start with abundance. Overwhelmingly. Anybody who's achieved anything great, doesn't matter what part of life it is. They were just exceptionally diligent and, disciplined and consistent stewards of what they did have. And guess what happened? They got more. All right. Here's some belief and success cycles to think about. We all know, but this is a good reminder that we actually do get what we give. Okay? And here is what it is. This is the RAS. This is the Matthew 7:7. Seek and you shall find. Knock and the door will be open. Ask and it will be given. Okay? We get what we get. This is the actual kind of process to think through. Okay? I call it the belief and success cycle. So it starts with beliefs, right? Beliefs is absolute certainty. Potential makes us tap our unlimited potential, okay? Recognizing that we have potential, okay? And then we take action, right? Once we believe that something's possible and we see the potential in ourselves and in the marketplace, then guess what? The next thing that we'll do is we'll take action, okay? And then once we take action, guess what? We get results. And the results will reinforce our belief for better or for worse. And this is the cycle, my friends. This is the paradigm, right? So your belief is, again, how you see your self-image, how you see yourself and the world. That's your paradigm. The potential is, having faith in yourself and the world, right? Recognize and respect your God-given unlimited potential. And then once you do that, you should be moved to take massive imperfect action. And then that will produce results. And then guess what? The results will confirm and fuel your beliefs. And the cycle repeats, okay? It's really fascinating, powerful stuff. Here's another way to look at it. It's just a different graphic. But the bottom line is the belief and success cycle is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Okay? So study this, think on it. In one of the previous trainings where I talked about Roger Bannister. Do y'all remember him? The guy that ran the first 4-minute mile. Okay, well, can you guess what Roger Bannister eventually became? This is fascinating. A neurologist. You just can't make that up. So mindset matters. It's kind of interesting. So here's another thing to consider is your circle of control versus your circle of concern. Okay. Um, it's where a lot of us find ourselves distracted in life, preoccupied with things that, again, are outside of our circle of control and influence. But for some reason, they preoccupy us with our concern, and they take over. So being conscious of these, studying these things and thinking through them, how they apply to your life is going to be huge. Okay. All right. Let's keep cruising. So this is another way to look at it. Again, you guys can pause. I'll put these into the resources in the community. Um, circle of control versus circle of concern. Very important stuff, friends. All right. Circle of influence. Last kind of thoughts here. The Serenity Prayer. Think about it. Obviously it's worth doing on the regular, friends. And then focusing on what you can control and don't waste energy on the things you can't control. All right. Okay. Most of the harm is caused in our head by ourselves and our thoughts. 1% of the harm is caused by reality, what happens in the outcome. The problem isn't usually the biggest problem, though. It's how we think about the problem. Okay? So what we focus on grows. Our attention is our greatest asset. It literally fertilizes our dreams or our nightmares, right? And here's the thing. Regardless of what the world is doing, we got to focus on ourselves and running our race. Okay? It's one of my favorite photos to remind us to ignore the things outside of our control, ignore what everyone else is doing, run our own race, swim our own race, like Phelps here is in the Olympics. And I mean, just couldn't be more perfect picture right here. All right. So next thought bomb. The rich don't work for money. They know how to have money work for them. And that is the focus of today, right? We're talking about how do we put our money to work. And I hope you guys are going to indulge and enjoy what I have to share with y'all. But these prerequisites, and again, framing our mind so that we're taking the most effective approach to this subject is huge. And throughout this process, when we're trying to do things that are new, big, bold, exciting, perceived as risky, perceived as challenging, okay, we must guard our head and heart, okay. And here's a couple thoughts to consider when it comes to guarding our head and our hearts, right? Because these are the things that can hold us back. Trust me, the mechanics, the recipes of riches are actually pretty simple and straightforward. But our mindset is going to, in effect, how we see these things. So here's the first one. Our ego is our enemy. No matter what investment opportunities you're pursuing, business opportunities, we must check our ego because it truly is our enemy. Next is our pride. Our pride is our prison. And lastly, our comfort, my friends, as middle America, middle class or upper middle class America, right? Average America suffers from a severe case of comfortitis, and that has become our cage. The cage that our potential stays trapped in for the rest of our life. And we never break out of that cage because of one of these three things. We never escape the prison, or we never conquer the enemy to fulfill our potential, use our God-given gifts to do the best we can in this life. Last thing I'll share with you is this thought. Humans are anxious to improve their circumstances. We all are, we wouldn't be here. But mostly, unfortunately, most humans are unwilling to improve themselves. I'm going to say that again. We, as humans, are anxious to improve our circumstances, but are unwilling to improve ourselves. The human who does not shrink from self-crucifixion can never fail to accomplish that which his heart is set. All right. The human who does not shrink from self-crucifixion can never fail to accomplish that which his heart is set. Good stuff. All right. I know that's deep. Now let's get into the fun, exciting part. All this stuff matters, my friends. We all go through it. We're all dealing with it now, or if we haven't, we will at some point. Okay. So let's talk about risk. The biggest risk is ignorance, of course, multiplied by inaction, aka analysis paralysis. Okay. Here's the thing. You have to know what your money is going to do before it gets in your hands, or it will do what it did last time, right? It's called atrophy, defaulting to, the previous, you know, paths, the previous places, that kind of thing, right? So, a quick recap on module 3, because this is going to tee up why this is so important, okay, for the multiply. All right. So here we go. The 4 cornerstones of a bedrock foundation. These 4 right here, my friends, cash flow, your CYA fund, credit cards and debt, credit score and rating. They're absolutely essential. You can execute them in any order and simultaneously. It requires 0 to very little knowledge and time. But once they're started, they're on autopilot. You can set and forget, and it buys you time. Okay. So we have to conquer our cash flow, maximize our income, minimize our expenses. Check. Okay. And then it's a very simple little process. You can draw this quadrant, list your income, list your expenses, list your assets, list your liabilities, right? Okay. Second is the CYA fund. Okay. The goal here is twofold. Step 1 is you want to make minimum payments until you have 1 month of living expenses in savings. Okay. Set aside. Okay. Then you want to pay off all your debt, okay, your bad consumer debt. And then once you're debt free, then you want to resume building your CYA fund to 12 months of living expenses, okay, set aside. For most people, okay, all right, becoming debt free, building up their 12 months of reserves, achieving an excellent credit score, okay, for a lot of individuals and households, that can take 3 months to 3 years, okay? That's the reality. But here's the good news. You're probably going to be using money for the rest of your life, right? So why not set the foundation even if it takes, 3 months to 3 years? Because here's the deal. Once you get these 4 in place, yes, it could take 3 months to 3 years, but it buys you time. What does it buy you time to do? It buys you time to actually do what I'm going to tell you in the second half of today, okay? It's so powerful, but you have to see the importance. You have to see why this progression and sequence matters. You're not missing out on anything. Do not succumb to scarcity, short-sightedness, and hastily think we have to go spread our seeds across 12 different continents and farms and of soil, right? You don't have to do that, because that's what most people do. And then they wake up in their 60s and 70s and they're nowhere near where they could have been, financially, or what they could have been for themselves, their family, their children, grandchildren, or maybe the causes that really resonate with their values in their heart, the calling that they want to do to impact others. So here's the thing about the CYA fund. Most people never ever get there. And I'm telling you, if you think about how good it will feel to have 12 months, 1 full year of living expenses, I mean, guys, you could endure nearly anything life can throw at you and come out better, right? Because that's the beginning. If you look at some of the best run companies in the world, why are they sitting on a ton of cash, right? Because it serves its purpose, okay? It gives you resilience to weather anything. Okay, so yes, the 4 cornerstones, last module, module 3, manage. These can take 3 months to 3 years, but guess what? It buys you time for this, okay? Before I jump into that though, okay, here's another thought bomb. There are 2 kinds of money problems. The first problem is not enough money, and the other is too much. Which one do you want? Okay. Uh, that's a decision. Are we stuck in scarcity, which is not enough, or do we want to deal with the challenge and problem of scarcity and struggle, or do we want to deal with the challenge of abundance and surplus? I mean, that's a decision, right? All right. Um, so here's some foundations and principles, okay, on module 4, today's topic, um, for multiplying. All right. The first is we want to um, we must complete modules 1 through 3, especially module 3, and get that foundation in place, right, before you jump into the multiply, meaning allocating your capital that way, okay, your financial resources, right? Um, here's some principles to consider, right, when it comes to multiplying and, you know, growing your money, is the law of sowing and reaping, okay? We get what we give in this life, okay? And um, last module, we talked about managing our money. The next level of managing, we all agree, making money versus managing. Managing is more important, because if you make $1 million a month, but you're spending $1.5 million on yachts and mansions and who knows what else, guess what? You're not gonna, make progress financially. So the next advanced level of managing is the multiplying, right? And anyone and everyone can do it, okay? Um, because anyone and everyone can learn how to operate a financial vehicle. And that is what investments are. Investments are financial vehicles, right? They simply get us from point A to point B financially. They each have their own pros and cons. You can think about everything from hot air balloons to unicycles, right? And if we want to go from Washington to Texas, okay, um, think about all the different vehicles that can get us there. They all have their pros and cons. So you have to think about, when it comes to multiplying your money, aka investing, those, see each type of investment, each asset class, each opportunity as an investment vehicle. They each bring their own unique combination of pros and cons, um, perks and pains, whether it's timeline, whether it's upfront costs, whether it's skill set to operate, whether it's the people involved in it. Okay. Um, the other thing to think about is, what are you looking for from your investment? Okay. Are you looking for um, income? Because really, there's three main purposes of how we invest, where we put our money. Okay. It's either um, we do it to create income, because that's the focus or priority. Okay. To produce income, to grow, or for tax benefits, or for capital preservation, meaning a store of value. Okay. So those are the four to think about. What are we doing? Are we doing it? Are we going into this investment opportunity? Are we looking for investment opportunities and investment vehicles that produce income, that can grow capital, that provide tax benefits, or is a store of value or capital preservation? Okay, those are the four buckets. Now, obviously, some investments and asset classes have attributes in some combination of those four, but every asset class is typically optimized for one or two, right? Each asset class and investment opportunity has a primary purpose. Does that make sense, friends? And it's one of those four. Okay, it's one of those four: income, growth, tax benefits, or preservation, capital preservation, store value. Okay. Um, another important uh, thing to think about: foundations and principles. Okay, to align, your head and heart, to really get your thinking in the world of multiplying your money and investing, is, it's a lost skill. Okay. And if you rewind the clock, the majority of humanity was during thousands of years what was called the agrarian age, right? So literally all of our um, forefathers and mothers, right? All of our ancestors, they survived through the agrarian age, right? They survived and thrived for thousands of years in the agrarian age, which means they mastered the simple skill and habit to survive and thrive, okay, based on planting, harvesting, and repeating, right? Taking the seeds from the previous harvest, planting them, and the cycle repeats, right? Also, the same with livestock, raising, reproducing, and repeating, right? Raising whatever it is, goats, sheep, cattle, whatever it is, and then they reproduce, and then we repeat the cycle, right? So that's why God put the seed into everything, right? It's contained within everything. So think about that when it comes to your money, okay? See every dollar, dime, uh, you have access to and control over, okay? Regardless of how you've come into it or have access to it, whether you earned it, inherited it, whatever. Okay, see that as seeds that you can plant, create a harvest, and repeat that you can grow exponentially. Okay. Um, but the problem was, we got so distracted, preoccupied in the last, say, 125 years because we went from the agrarian age for thousands of years to now the last 125 years of the industrial age, and now we're into the information age. Um, the last, say 30 years, 40 years, and it's kind of a lost skill and habit and mindset. But it really is that simple, my friends. Okay, that's why it's within reach of all of us to grow and multiply our money, because it really is that simple. If you can learn how to have a garden and some chickens, to give you like a modern, simple context, okay, you can do the same thing, that same approach, the same simple fundamentals, foundations, and principles and practices of having a garden and some chickens in your yard. You can do the same thing with your finances and your money. Okay. It's all the same. Those principles don't change. Why? That's how God made it. So, um, here's the thing though. This is part of the reality. And yes, it's controversial, but I encourage you to raise this to my attention if you want to learn more about this, so you don't think I'm crazy, because we're not going to give it much time to it today. But in the last 125 years, the system has been completely rigged against you. Okay? Meaning that the powers that be do not prioritize your freedom and independence and self sufficiency. They prioritized producing a society of citizens that can operate the machine, the industrial machine, right? For corporations and the government, right? They they want to spit out employees, not entrepreneurs and investors. Okay. Um, I know that seems controversial. It might seem a bit ornery, but that is a raw reality, my friends. Okay. And that is another big piece to this game, and why things, no matter what we do, if we stick to the script of the majority and the mainstream, we will not actually break out of the matrix and achieve our potential and the progress that you've seen other people do. This is how it's actually done. Okay. So those are the prereqs that I wanted to cover with y'all before we jump in here. All right. Any questions so far? I know we're doing good on time. We've got about an hour left. You got any questions so far? I know that was quite a run.
I'm good, buddy.
All right.
No questions for me.
Awesome. Sweet. Okay, so here's the deal. Let's talk about the big R-rated word when it comes to investing, risk. All right. We're going to lead with risk. Why? Because that's usually one of the hot buttons, the hot topics. Whether people say it or not, acknowledge it or not, it's always there, right? What are the real risks in the financial game? Okay. Well, here's the two biggest wealth robbers. One is taxes. The other is inflation. Okay. Now, these are next module, right? The moat. we're going to do a deep dive into this stuff, and it's going to blow your mind, I think. Stuff you probably never heard of or knew. And I'm kind of excited for that as well, because I'm all about protecting what good, honest, hardworking people have earned and created in their life, and that is the focus of next week. But these two warrant the honorable mention, because when it comes to investing, we have to factor in taxes and inflation, right? And here's the thing, going back to the game was rigged against you, meaning the rules changed, and most people don't know the rules. Why? Because they're not taught in public school. They don't teach in their corporations or any of that. Okay. So here's the reality. Guess what? These are the two biggest wealth robbers for the majority of people who are passive investors. But to the rich and the financially successful and savvy, these are two of their biggest allies. I know that seems crazy, but it's like judo, right? You just go with the flow, use the momentum and leverage once you recognize the rules, right? How the game is played with respect to taxes and inflation. And the third one is debt, okay? Which we're going to cover, and you guys are going to love that. All right, so here's the thing. We must understand and factor in these two into every financial decision, okay? I know we covered that in the past, but it warrants repeating because, well, what's the mother of all learning, right? Repetition. So we have to be hyper conscious of the how taxes and inflation factor into any financial decision. Okay. All right. Here is my biggest lesson though, and risk factor when it comes to this game. All right. My biggest lesson and risk factor and greatest ROI. So it's not all bad, right? The highest highs and the lowest lows I've had in my financial and adventures in investing and entrepreneurship, I have discovered, right, my biggest lessons and risk factor, but also my greatest source of fulfillment and highest ROI has come from this right here, my friends. People. People simply make or break anything in life, which is why we're here. That's what brings us here together today, right? Is to create a tribe and a community of the right people for the right reasons, so that we can become, we can be, do, have, and give whatever our heart and Holy Spirit's calling us, whatever that looks like for you in this life. Okay. And that is one of the most exciting and fun parts of this adventure with y'all. Okay. So people make or break everything. So the takeaway is we must choose very carefully who we trust and bring into our life, our business, our finances, and our investments. All right. Because they can be the greatest joy and fun and fulfillment and source of prosperity and success, but they can also be, the source of some of the biggest heartache, financial losses, and stress, all that. Okay. So that's why I'm delighted to have all you guys here. Keep that in mind. That's my personal biggest, I never lost money on a property, but I have lost money on people. Okay. So bonus wealth robbers, prosperity preventers. We've covered these before, but again, they warrant hyper conscious awareness of, right? Of, any of these bad, these limiting prosperity preventers, right? Laziness, bad habits, lack of education, lack of experience, lack of guidance, bad attitude, bad influence from friends and family, lack of focus, lack of determination, or for a lot of folks, it simply comes down to lack of courage. Meaning lack of courage is that, going back to the powerful, subtle, and even sneaky subconscious powers, powerful influences of the perception of other people, right? Friends, family, and the opposite of courage is conformity, right? Is cowering into the comfortable corners of conformity, vice courageously embracing with both hands, boldly running with your potential, with your gifts towards your highest, contribution to the world. So the takeaway, we must avoid these like the survey statistics. All right, two types of investors. Number one, passive, right? And you know, the two biggest problems with this approach, which is what most people do, okay, is that we get what we give in this life, and it goes back to the law of sowing and reaping. Meaning, if literally we pay no attention, if all we do is sign up for a company 401k, or sign up with a financial advisor, set up some auto pay contribution, right? Every month that goes into something that we don't even know where it is, what it's doing, how it works, any of that. Okay. I mean, really, what if we did that, took that passive pay and pray like approach to other parts of life? Seriously, what type of results can you honestly expect, right? It's almost like, it's literally like going back to the investment vehicle. If you just got into your modern car and hit autopilot or whatever these cool new cars have, right? And you expected to arrive at your destination safely without ever grabbing the steering wheel, looking out the windshield, putting your feet on the pedals. You know what I mean? Like, seriously, what type of reasonable outcome would you expect from that approach to operating your vehicle, right? It's kind of ridiculous, but that's actually what most people do, unfortunately. And that's why they get the results they do, right? So, plus you got the, money myth number 4, the 3 constants in life, right? Choice, change, and principles. So if we're just passively doing the same thing, no one's actually paying attention. There's no active involvement, right? It's literally the opposite of sowing and reaping, and tending your crops and your herds, your crops and your flocks, right? But that is what most people do. They just hand it over to Wall Street, the government, and hope for the best, right? Well, that's why they get the results they do. Okay, so, and this captures the actual roller coaster ride that, again, overwhelmingly people. Q1 of this year is a perfect example. Look what happened in Q1. Perfect example. Is it bouncing back? Is it volatile now? Yeah, probably. And some people got crushed. Other people crushed it, and cashed in big, but it just goes back to, the ship without a captain or a rudder, is going to be drifting and thrown about the seas by the market, the economy, the world, right? That's the passive investor approach. And it just, unfortunately, most people default there. Thankfully, the second investor type is an active investor, the top 5%. It's accelerated, accurate, adequate, awesome. Okay. Here's some 2 types of investors and the attributes, okay, of why one is better than the other, how they actually compare. So passive investors have no control, right, which creates higher risk. Banks won't lend money on it. They can't get insurance on their assets or investments. They pay higher taxes. They worry about market crashes, and ultimately results in they achieve lower returns, and their plan can run out of money, and they may never retire or achieve financial freedom. However, thankfully, the active investor has control, which lowers their risk. They can use OPM, other people's money, the bank's money, and others. They can insure their assets and investments. They may pay 0 taxes. They welcome a market crash. Why? Because that's the ultimate sale rack. That's Black Friday. Back the truck up. Let's go shopping and buy assets at a discount on sale. They can achieve unlimited returns, and they can provide for generations, and they may even retire early. Okay, so let's look at these controls. We talked about control. Okay, what part of an investment? What are the types of controls that an active investor has? All right, here's some. Control over yourself, first and foremost, right? Again, you are your greatest investment. That's the discipline and the mindset. Control over income and expenses related to the investment. Control over your asset and investment type, right? You get to select what type of assets, what investment type. Number 4, control over management of the asset and investment type and portfolio. Control over the tax implications and effects on your investments. control over liability and risk, control over your plan, control over the information you use, because you're not flying blind with your head in the sand, right? And control over your time, and ultimately control over your education and advisors, right? It's a team sport, right? You don't want to do anything on your own. And that rounds out the 10 investor controls, okay? Here's the real risk in the finance game, just as a summary: taxes, inflation, markets, right? And the investor, okay? The investor, which that's what we're talking about. Here's the thing: is it worth it? This is the question you're probably asking. Is it worth learning to become an active investor? Okay. Well, here's a scenario to consider. So on the left-hand side, we got passive investors, right? Someone who invests, saves and invests because they brew coffee at home, and that's the Joe to go, right? So they save $40 a month because they're brewing coffee at home, and they're skipping the drive-through on the way to work, saving $40 a month and investing it at the high end of what passive investors achieve, right? Average historical, which is the stock market, 11% a year, 7 to 11% a year, right? So they take that $40 a month that they save on coffee by brewing coffee at home, and they invest it for 20 years, end up with 30 grand. All right, maybe you got a bonus and you invested that one time, run it for 20 years, compounds at 11%, and you got 177. And then let's say you're fabulously frugal, save $500 a month, which is what a lot of people do. And then down in 20 years, you got that. Okay. So active investors, though, can achieve higher returns. Let's say the same amount of capital, okay, the same seeds planted in a different soil, the same seeds, the same quantity of seeds planted in different soil. Okay. $40 a month at 25% for 20 years, 168K. So 31,000 versus 168,000. You get a bonus, throw it in, let it ride for 20 years, compounds out to 1.9 million. Or you're frugal, $500 a month, do that for 20 years, grow it at 25% a year, compounded, 2 million in 20 years. All right, that is the power of compounding and the power of being an active investor. So here's another consideration, right? Who's the richest at age 40, right? So we got X, Y, and Z. We got X started at age 21, 21 through 30, invested $3,000 a year, $30,000 total in principal, meaning their own cash into the investment, and they grow it at 25%. It's over $1 million by the time they're 40. All right, age 25 to 40, 15 years, $5,000 a year. Okay, they started a little later. Total principal 80 grand, and becomes 863, over 800, almost 900,000 by the age of 40. And then from the ages 30 to 40, 10,000 a year, 110,000, 110,000 in principal, and then they end up with over 500 grand. Okay, so all these are compounded at 25% of the year, 25% per year in growth. All right, as you can see, that's the real power, friends. The real power of compounding is the rate of return, and anybody can earn this rate of return. So is it worth it? Well, let me show you something real quick. Here is a calculator that I made for us to play with. All right, check it out. One second. I think you guys will like this. All right, here we go. Okay. So here is the calculator that I made for us. Okay. So if you started with, let's say it's $2,500, and at 5% annual for 10 years, and then you added another $2,500 a year. Okay. All right. Now we're going to do $1,000 at 11% for 10 years, and add $1,000 a year. Okay. But then we're going to go over here and start with $500. We're going to do 25%, let it run for 10 years and add $500 a year. Okay. Let's see how this plays out, because this is the real power of compounding. You got it? All right. So scenario one is right here, 2,500. It's leading the way because it started with way more capital. Yes. Okay. And at 10 years, look what happened. At 10 years, scenario three, right around year 9, scenario three passed scenario two with half the amount of capital because the rate of return was so much higher. Now here's where things get really exciting. Let's go to 20 years for each of these. Okay? Watch this. That, my friends, is the power of compounding. Right there. Scenario three, the least amount of capital, the highest rate of return, the least amount of additional principal. Okay? And right around year, 13, 14, it just takes off. Okay? That's the power of compounding. Right there. Simple calculator. If you guys want this, I can post it into the into our community. Do you have any questions on that before I keep jumping into the next piece? All right.
No questions.
I'm good.
All right, cool. So here is the two ideal investments, right? This is the focus for today, and this whole program is introducing and unpacking the ideal investments, okay? So two ideal investments, here's the attributes of an ideal investment, right? I stands for income, inflation, impact, insurance, and influence, okay? You can influence ideal investments. Can you influence a CD? Can you influence a mutual fund? Can you influence Apple stock? I know those are rhetorical questions, right? But the ideal investments have these attributes. They produce income, right? They create income streams. They're an inflation hedge. You can also create an impact on your community and your family, right? Because they have the opportunity to serve others in many ways. And powerfully enough, they also have a variety of insurance for these investments. The D is for deductions and depreciation. Okay. E is for equity. So the deductions and depreciation obviously are big tax breaks. Equity, meaning you own a stake in something. You own a portion of these or all of them. A is for appreciation and amortization. Appreciation meaning the value of these two ideal investments increase over time. And you can influence, back to the I, the appreciation. Amortization is a feature and function of debt service, servicing debt, and amortizing down the debt, which also builds equity, okay, over time. L is for leverage, okay? Lots of forms of leverage. We're going to go over some in a minute. But these are the two ideal asset classes: real estate that you own and control, and businesses that you own and control. Period. End of story. All right. Brain power is the ultimate leverage. I will say that when it comes to leverage. Okay, now let's break them down. So for starting at the top with income, inflation, impact, the I, okay, the I, obviously real estate can produce a variety of streams of income. Real estate is an inflation hedge, right? It goes up against inflation and meets or beats inflation. What are some impacts of real estate on our community and our family? Well, here's an example. Owning real estate, I have been able to share the wealth of opportunity with, at this point, quite literally hundreds and hundreds of people, from contractors to property managers to title and escrow reps to lenders. My goodness, my team, my partners, my private investors and lenders. It just goes on and on. But also the tenants. we provide affordable housing, quality affordable housing to tenants, right? People that need a place to live, to rent, and also with our flips, quality housing to impact the lives of the next generation of home buyer, right? Insurance, obviously you can insure real estate, lots of ways. There's even insurance riders for loss of rents, right? Check into those. And then influence, right? Can you influence the performance of a real estate and a piece of property? Of course you can, right? You can do forced depreciation, which we'll get to in a second, right? Okay, let's look at business now when it comes to the I. Well, all the others basically apply. And obviously businesses can achieve all those. But one thing I want to highlight is the impact. Businesses is one of the biggest impacts that we can have with businesses on our community and our family is what? Jobs. Jobs change lives. Jobs save lives. My goodness. So the ability to create jobs, impact our community and family and nation with our businesses is huge. I mean, how do you put a number on that? I don't know. But it's hard to do that with a W-2 job, right? It's hard to create jobs when you're in a job, right? Unless you're in HR, I guess. So, all right. Now let's look at the D, right? Deductions, depreciation. Okay. Well, here's the thing. It's called phantom cash flow. Okay. And we actually have the ability to pay low to drastically reduce or even eliminate taxable income through these two big D's. And again, what's the two biggest wealth robbers? Taxes and inflation. Okay. That's why the two ideal investments, guess what? Conquers them. It's the antidote to the asinine amounts of taxes and inflation that we battle every day, right? So deductions and depreciation. Depreciation is called phantom cash flow. Okay. I actually created a list as part of my research. It's going to be one of the bonuses and that I'll put in our resource section in our community. A list of over 400 specific deductions for individuals, households, and businesses. I think you guys are going to love that. It's a really cool study. That was interesting to compile. But I think you'll enjoy browsing it. It'll give you ideas and inspiration to, again, see the opportunities out there, maybe find some tax relief, and lighten your tax burden, and also to share with others and bring up, and when you're collaborating with your team of advisors, your CPAs and accountants and even attorneys, you can have some more specific ideas to have more productive, collaborative, profitable relationships with those professionals that you hire. Okay. All right. Next is equity. So equity is owning, okay, a portion of real estate or businesses, or you own the entire thing, right? Equity is better than salary. Okay. That's the key. A lot of people built wealth by simply being at the right place at the right time as an employee, and they chose equity over cash, okay, or equity over, earnings, earned income, W-2 raises. They said, nope, I want a portion of this venture, a portion of this asset, a portion of this business, okay, and that has transformed their lives financially. Equity is important. It's owning a stake in, right, real estate or business. So let me compare that so it kind of have some context. Even if you had $1 million CD at a bank, okay, do you own any equity in that bank? No, of course not, right?
No.
Exactly. So equity is important, my friends. Equity over earned income, right, and W-2. All right, next, appreciation and amortization. Okay, we're going to go over that here in a little bit. You guys are going to love these calculators I'm going to share with you. But appreciation is obviously these two ideal investments can appreciate. They do. And you can influence that appreciation, right? You can do forced appreciation. There's market appreciation, all kinds of stuff. And then amortization is when you're using debt, and which is a form of leverage, which we'll get to in a second. Amortization is reducing the balance. Amortizing is a payment schedule. That's what the word means. Amortizing down the amount that you owe, which builds more equity. Okay. And then leverage. So leverage is one of the most important pieces when you are building first generation wealth. We have to find every form of leverage we can. Okay. And here's the deal. Debt is a weapon. Use it wisely. Poor people fear debt. Why? Because we fear what we don't understand. And we recognize that it can have severe consequences. Well, just like credit cards, guns, alcohol, whatever. Pick it. Anything can be misused and abused. Obviously, debt is one of those things that's oftentimes very misused and abused. Millionaires, though, they don't fear debt. They use it to buy assets that generate what? Cash flow, aka income. So if you borrow to build wealth, you win. If you borrow to impress people, you lose, right? So again, we got to do the right things for the right reasons. Okay, here is again another comparison you've seen before of the two ideal investments, right? Just so it's clear and it makes sense. If we want to go buy $100,000 in stock, so on the left-hand side, bottom left box, if we want to buy $100,000 in stock, that requires $100,000 in cash in most cases. Rarely can you get the brokerage, to give you some margin account where maybe you get 50%. Let's just say 100 for most people. Well, if the $100,000 in stock that you buy goes up 10%, appreciates 10% in the first year, right? Well, 10% on 100,000 in cash, right, is $10,000, right? So 10% on 100,000 in cash is 10,000 nominal amount appreciation. However, in real estate side, right, you can get into real estate. You can buy a $100,000 property with $10,000 cash, also known as 10%. And the first year, if the property, the $100,000 property, is the value of the property, goes up 10%, now the property is worth $110,000, right? That first year 10% appreciation is a $10,000 increase. And because you have only $10,000 in cash, the return on your investment, you didn't invest $100,000 in real estate, you invested $10,000 in real estate. The ROI, return on investment, on your $10,000 is 100%. It's that simple, my friends. All right, now we're going to jump into a few scenarios of these two ideal investments. All right, I'm going to move quick, but I'm going to pause so y'all can ask questions, okay? Scenario number one is just straightforward, my friends. Primary residence, your home, okay? So let's say you purchase a home for $400,000, right? Median, it's basically median price in the U.S. right now. It's high threes, last I checked, okay? That's why I came up with that number, by the way. The down payment, again, yes, you can get in with zero down with USDA, down payment assistance, VA for us vets. But again, let's be conservative and say you get a down payment for your first home, right? Primary residence of 5%. So that's $20,000 down payment. And then closing costs, let's say it's another 2% of closing costs, which of course is $8,000. So your total cash in is about 7%, which is $28,000, right? $28,000 to get into your first home, right? And here is the breakdown, my friends. And this is where, if you have a moment to grab your screen and watch this breakdown, okay? I want to share this with y'all. Okay, so this is my own calculator that I made for my business and my team, okay? I call it the power of real estate. All right, here's the deal. The address right here at the top, 123 My Home, right? So this is your primary residence. You're going to buy it for purchase price $400,000. You're going to have $28,000 cash into the deal, 7%. It goes to down payment, closing costs, etc. And your appreciation, okay, is 3%. Okay, where did I get this number here? Okay, so here is where I'm going to show you this calculator, but I want you to see where I came up with this number. Okay, so if you Google or Bing, right, historical home values in America have gone up about 4 to 5% a year. Okay, so when we talk about appreciation, we're talking about the annual property value increase. I'm going to be conservative, right, and say 3%. Again, that's the historical average. So if you own the home for 5, 10, 20 years, expect an average annual value increase of 3%. Okay, amortization. Where did I come up with that? Okay, well, I have a calculator here, and there's a loan schedule in it, and there's the principal piece to that. Okay, so it's drawing from this spreadsheet. This is a screenshot, but it's drawing from the spreadsheet when you plug in all the loan numbers. Okay, this is the amortization, meaning the principal reduction, okay, of the loan balance every month or every year. Sorry. All right. And because it's your primary residence, you don't get any depreciation. That's why it's zeroed out. There's no cash flow. It's zeroed out. And obviously there's no rents. So that's zeroed out. But here is what I need y'all to understand for yourself, for your family, your friends. This is the power and why I don't care what any, controversial, drama queens on social media say about owning your own residence or not owning your own home. And it's a poor investment. Well, they're just not doing the math because, they're just trying to pitch you on whatever they're trying to sell you on. But the math is the math, right? And here's the power. Look at the bottom for your total ROI right there. That's just owning a home, friends. Just owning a home. Is there anywhere else that the average American person can get that anywhere near that, even half that? Probably not, right? This is the math. This is the real power of owning a home, buying the right way, okay? And it's that simple. And obviously, let's look at a couple of things. Appreciation, obviously that can go up a lot higher. Amortization, guess what? This number only goes up every single month, right? The principal, because the amortization schedule for most loans, guess what? It goes up. The principal reduction goes up every single month. So that's only going to increase over time, right? So keep that in mind. All right. Scenario number 2. The duplex, the smarter starter home. So this is a scenario that's near and dear to me because, I unknowingly, meaning ignorantly and foolishly in hindsight, kept my family in base housing for 5 years because I did not understand the power of the VA home loan. I did not understand the power of what I'm teaching you all today. So that's where this one's coming from. All right, so the duplex, the smarter starter home / your first rental. Okay, so let's say you bought a duplex, simple little duplex for $500,000. Down payment of 3.5%. Whoa, 3.5%? Yes, you can buy 2 to 4 units, right, with a small down payment through FHA. Okay, and other loan programs actually as well. Local community banks and credit unions have some pretty cool programs as well. But FHA, you can get in with about 3.5% down because it's your primary residence. All right. No closing costs. Why? Because we're going to get creative and we're going to finance those. We're going to negotiate and fit those into the deal. So there's no closing costs. The seller is going to pay those for us out of escrow at closing. So total cash in 3.5%, which is $17,500. Got it? Now, this is where it gets fun. Let's look at the analysis. What's the calculation? Let's run it through our Power of Real Estate calculator. Well, if we look at 123 My Duplex, we purchased it for $500,000. We got $17,500 into it. We're appreciating at 3% a year. Amortization is a little higher, right, compared to the home because of the price difference, right? Depreciation. Whoa, now we get depreciation. What is this? Well, because half of the home is a rental property, is an investment, you get to plug in your marginal tax bracket. In this case, we're going to use 22%, which we get that annual deduction, my friends, of $2,640. That is money in the pocket. And then let's say, well, the other side of the duplex, right, that we rent out, it doesn't entirely pay our whole mortgage, but it does put $1,000 a month in our pocket, right, net. Tim, right, rents minus Tim V. See that, what that number is based on to the right. Okay, so that's another $12,000 a year. And then we're going to be able to bump rents up every year, 3% a year. Who can guess what the ROI is, the total ROI in this scenario? Anybody? If y'all can see the screen.
Almost 200%.
Mm-hmm. Good woman. Good math. 198.5%. You probably think the calculator's broke or Rance is crazy. But my friends, this is why I love real estate. This is why I do what I do. Math. It's simple. We understand it. We've used it all. We've lived in it. We've owned it. Right? This is it. Right here. Do the numbers adjust in different markets, different property types, different price points? Of course. This is conceptual, but it's real. Like I could go find probably 50 of these right now for you if I wanted to. Okay. So, all right. Scenario number 3. This is where it gets interesting. So, you guys pay attention to this because I think y'all are really gonna love it. This is gonna. All right. Let's talk about a fix and flip with zero cash investment. So how do we buy a fix and flip with zero of our own money? $0. Okay. Let's look at this. Well, let's say we buy a fixer-upper for $250. After repaired value is $400,000. Okay, so the property fixed up, sold on the market, is $400,000. Let's say the construction on this home is about $50,000 because we got a lean mean construction machine, bring those costs down, all that kind of stuff. We buy material, we got small local independent contractors, keep the costs down, and maybe the scope of work wasn't that high, right? So it doesn't need too much, but it needs enough of specific things. So 50,000 is our rehab or construction budget. So how do we finance and fund these types of projects with zero of our own money? Well, the first is a hard money lender first position. Okay, so what does that look like? Well, it's a purchase price and rehab, okay, of 65. All right. 65% loan to value. So 65% of the 400,000. Got it? You can do that all day, every day. First, the hard money loan, first position loan covers your purchase price and your rehab. Okay. That's why we get that. But then there's the down payment piece, which is where we bring in a private second. Now, what does that mean? That means we get to share the wealth of real estate opportunities with friends, family, right? In a grassroots way, an incredible opportunity they would not have access to otherwise. Not only can it be like their funds that could be sitting in a CD, could be cash in a savings or checking, or it could be funds sitting in any of retirement accounts, IRA, 401k, SEPs, HSAs, Coverdell education savings accounts, ESAs, right? So we bring in a private second, so second position mortgage at 15% loan to value. That's 60,000. Okay. Now, what is the breakdown? Well, how do we use the 60,000? Well, here it is. 26,000 goes to the down payment. Okay. Closing cost is 2%. So that's say 6,000. Holding cost is 4 months. So basically 2 months of construction, 2 months to dispo and sell the property. All right. And let's say holding cost is about 3,000 a month. That's interest only payments on the loan and then utilities, right? Okay. Taxes, insurance, utilities. So there's 4 months at 3,000 a month. We have 6,000 in reserves. And this is where things get interesting, friends. Guess what? What's the total of that? 12, right? So that's 24 plus 26, right? 24 plus 26 is 50,000. Yes, but we have 60,000 total. So what do we do with the rest? Well, that's your upfront payday. This is where the smart, savvy investors get paid to buy real estate. So that's a $10,000 tax-free upfront payday to cover your living expenses, cover your operating overhead, whatever you need it for. Or you can just add it to your reserves. You don't have to use it. You don't have to spend it. But it's there if you wanted it or needed it. All right? So let's look at the breakdown here. All right? So here is the breakdown in ROI for a fix and flip with zero cash investment. So again, the property's ARV after repair value is 400,000. We're going to retire the debt, right? So we have the hard money first, which is at 260, 65% loan to value. And then we have the private second at 60,000, 15% loan to value. Then, so that's a total of 320, yes? So we got to subtract the 320 from the 400. Now we have our cost to sell, right? So we have closing costs at 3%. So that's title and escrow and excise tax, right? Tax transfer, transfer tax. So that's 12,000, 3% on the 400,000. Then we have commissions, right? 4%. So that's about 2.5% to the buyer's agent, 1.5% to our listing agent because it's a layup. Usually we'd use that in-house, or it's repeat referral. So we usually get a little flexibility on our listing compensation. All right, so that's 16,000 in commissions, subtotal of 28,000, right? Next, total expenses. Let's total it all up. So we got 320,000 in debt retirement, 28,000 in cost to sell. So it's 348,000 total costs, right? Total expenses and costs for this project, right? So what does that leave us with? Total profit of $52,000, right? Let me see. Alma, you got your hand raised. What's up?
No, if the previous slide, the hard money first,
Yes.
at 260, you said that covers the purchase price part of the rehab, but not all of the rehab, right?
Correct.
So wouldn't you
Yep.
take out some of that in the private second?
It is. Yeah, it covers the down payment requirements for that. Exactly. So the down payment is usually 10. Most hard money loans require like 10% down payment, but there's also the loan to value factor as well. So you're absolutely correct though. Is the majority of the purchase and rehab is typically included in the hard money first, but a lot of times a portion of the rehab is also covered by the private second via the down payment plus a little more. Yes, good point for sure. Okay, so total expenses and costs 348. That leaves you a potential profit of 52,000. And here's where things get interesting, right? Is if you don't have any money in a deal, what's your ROI in this case? It's infinite. You have time, you have risk, you have responsibility. But if you don't have any money in an investment, you have no capital into it at all. You just have your character, you have maybe your credit, right? But none of your own capital. That's an infinite ROI. And all things go well. In some cases, you can make $5,000, $10,000+ tax free. You pay. Here's the difference, friends. You pay taxes, right? The taxable is on the 52, but not on the 10. Why is the 10 tax free? Because it's debt. You'll pay interest on it because you're borrowing it from a hard money lender or a private lender. But you don't pay tax on it. And typically, what's a lot lower? Tax rate or interest rate? For most people, interest is way lower than what you pay in taxes. All right, I know that was a lot. So we can pause for a second and answer questions on the 3 real estate scenarios. What are y'all's thoughts or questions on those? And then I got a few for businesses.
Oh, I understand what you just did.
Easy day. Well, yeah, we've been there, done that, right? Yep.
I think it's better to just go all private money though. If you get hard money, balling into one, put them in the first.
Yeah, great question.
If you have that person.
For sure, 100%. That's an excellent point. So here's just for what it's worth. Let's compare and contrast hard money versus private money. So um, the reality of the two is that um, they're both in equal abundance. Okay. The only difference, my friends, is that hard money, for most people, when you're starting out, especially, hard money is simply more accessible in a lot of cases because that's a business and they're just marketing and they're out there and they're looking for people to lend money to. Whereas like private individuals, oftentimes they may have the capital and they may would love to have an opportunity to earn, 6 to 9%, um, you know, 10 to 9 to 12% on their money, mailbox money. They don't have to do anything. They're not picking up a hammer. They're just signing paperwork at their own convenience and sending a wire to title and escrow. So, but yeah, it comes down to accessibility. But they're both in equal abundance out there. It's just a matter of accessibility between the two. And you're absolutely right, though. In a perfect world, I would never work with a hard money lender ever again because I just want to share the wealth of opportunity with friends, family, and private individuals, and give them access to an investment opportunity that they would never otherwise have. Wall Street doesn't offer any of this. Financial advisors, none of that. Any questions on those before we jump into the business scenarios?
Nope, so good.
All right, cool. So here is business scenario number 1. Very simple stuff, my friends. All right, start your own. Simple service. So startup costs, let's say it's $2,500. You're just starting a simple service company. You need a little bit of maybe tools and equipment, and a little bit of startup costs to maybe get your entity set up, that kind of thing. All right, so $2,500 in startup costs. Let's say again it's part-time. You're starting a simple little service business, and your monthly revenues, $500. Let's say your monthly expenses are about $100. For gas and consumables or that kind of thing. Maybe a little marketing. All right. So just a bootstrap, shoestring budget of a simple service business. All right. Year 1 revenue, right? Gross revenue is $6,500 a month. Year 1 expenses, $1,200. And year 1 pre-tax profit of $4,800. And guess what? The ROI is on that, 192%, right? You got $2,500 into it, and year 1 pre-tax profit of $4,800. That's the power of small, simple service businesses, right? You can grow a small handful of seeds into a lot. Yes, it's work. It's very active involved, but it doesn't have to be like that forever, right? Because a simple service business, you can delegate, you can automate, you can structure JV partnerships. So you're sharing the workload, but also growing your revenue and ultimately increasing your pre-tax, profit. So, but this is just a simple little thing, right? I know a wonderful young lady who, started her own house cleaning business. This is pretty much, she earned a lot more than this, but this is a very simple example. All right, scenario number 2. Buy an established business that's for sale. Okay. Now in this scenario, I actually pulled right here in the Puget Sound, Western Washington, a thriving dry cleaning business with over 25 years of success. True story. This is an actual case study right from this week. Okay. Purchase price, $150,000. Let's say they do seller finance of 80%, so that's $120,000. You bring in a private second for the down payment of 20%, right? So that's $30,000. Cash out of pocket. So this is where, okay, well, hold on. This isn't zero down, Rance. No, we don't always, hit the trifecta, unicorn. Sometimes we do have to have some skin in the game. I've done that many times in real estate, and certainly in my businesses. So in this case, let's say, you set aside some cash. Maybe you sold a car, you sold a house, you're selling some stocks, bonds, and Bitcoin and whatever else, and you got 15,000 or 10% cash out of pocket into the deal for miscellaneous stuff, right? To get everything transferred and set up and, all that. So 15,000 out of pocket. Maybe it covers some of the closing costs and transfers, setup costs, all that kind of stuff, right? So you got 10% of your own, or 15,000 of your own cash into this simple, established dry cleaning business, right? So year one gross revenue, 175,000. Year one expenses, 108,000. Year one debt service, 12,000, right? Let's say it's how did I come up with that? You guys want to see how I came up with that real quick? Here's how I came up with that. Let's say between your private, your seller finance 80%, and then your private second, let's say they both agreed to finance you at interest only because they just want to create an income stream for them that meets or beats inflation, right? Because that's that investor, the seller of the dry cleaning business, and your private investor who's coming in at 20%, private second, with 30,000 cash in the deal. They both prefer a simple, steady mailbox money, passive income stream, okay, to meet or beat inflation because that's just their objectives. That's their priorities for where they're at in life. So here's the math. You ready? So if we fully finance the purchase, right? 80% seller finance, 20% private second. So 150,000 is fully financed. And they both agree to just at 8% interest only, there's your 12,000. Got it? There's your debt service on, here's your pre-tax profit, 55,000, and year one ROI on your what? What is the ROI based on, my friends? What number?
Investment.
Your cash out of pocket.
You got it, my friends.
Initial investment.
Heck yeah, right? They're 15 grand out of pocket. Okay, 367%. Okay, do you want to know how long? Let me show y'all something. This is why this is so powerful. Okay, so right here, this is what's called the TSP. I call it the Terrible Savings Plan, affectionately, but it's Uncle Sam's 401k. Okay, this is the high watermark right here in red of the best case. But the reality is over here on the 4 to 6 to 8 range, right? Okay, annual growth, my friends, of one of the biggest index fund passive retirement plans on the planet, because it's the TSP, it's the federal government, right? Military, DOD, all that. Okay, so the best average is 11%. Okay, so let's do a little math. How many years do we need to invest in a typical, okay, to get this type of return? How many years do we have to wait to passively pay and pray and wait? Let's divide that 367 by, I'm going to be generous and round up to 12. Oh, no worries, guys. It's only 30 years of passive investing to get what you can get in a year. Y'all seeing the power of this? So is it worth it to become an active investor? All day, every day, my friends. Okay, now that one jumped ahead, but I'm going to go ahead and skip. So I forgot to tweak that a little bit. All right, so here's a JV partnership on an existing business. Okay, we talked about JV partnerships in the week 2, module 2, making Mo Money. We talk about JV partnerships. So you can actually, with your own initiative, creativity, resources, network, and maybe capital, but in this case, we're not going to do any capital. Okay, we're just going to use our other intangible assets, non-financial assets, to create a JV partnership with an existing business. So we have zero startup cost, right? But we're going to create a monthly revenue stream of $2,500. Yes, there's going to be some expenses associated with that. So we're going to reduce that by $500 a month. So we're going to look at our annual year one gross revenue of $30,000, year one expenses of $6,000, but a year one pre-tax profit of $21,000. And when you have zero capital in the deal, there is your lazy 8 ROI. Simple, friends. Not rocket science. It's farming, right? It's farming. It's just simple. But in the modern context, right? We still got to plow. We still got to plant. We still got to water. We still got to weed and feed, right? Keep the pests at bay. We still got to tend our crops and our flocks. And the harvest is there. It's within all of our reach. Whether you want, a 25 to 50% return, 192% return, 300+ % return, or lazy 8, my favorite, infinite return. You want to make money tax free? It's all up there. It's all ready for the grab. Okay. So again, 2 types of investors. Which kind are you? But more importantly, which will you choose to become? Because that's a decision. It's a decision. You can't unlearn what you now know. So final thoughts. Your beliefs create your behavior. Your attitude determines your altitude. How high and far do you want to go? So again, why do the rich get richer and poor get poorer? Especially for first generation. They have an abundant, focused mindset. They invest in themselves first, recognizing that we are the prize. We, not out of ego, not out of hubris and full-hearted arrogance, but out of pure humility and recognizing of what we are all born with, right? We see the value in ourselves. Why? Because he sees the value in us, right? So, high-level financial literacy. Anyone can learn it. It's elementary math. They focus on being active investors in the context of their own. I could have used examples of arts and music or creative, little businesses and investments. I could have used, the nurturing side of childcare or elder care or healthcare. It doesn't matter. Is there a need for the product or service? Yes. Okay. Align your purpose with the market's need, right? Align your interest with the market's demand, right? Focus on ideal investments. We covered why. Obviously, that's good math and it works. And then prioritize assets over liabilities, right? Again, the rule of 100. Lock this in, my friends. It's totally worth it. It's one of the most important things I could teach y'all. If you invest 100 hours a year developing any skill and discipline, that's about 20 minutes a day. This is the power of compounding, okay? You will be better than 95% of the world in that discipline, right? Nothing truly compounds like consistency, and especially when we're talking about the consistency of investing in ourselves and improving ourselves. Here's a fun fact. Did you know that if you picked any subject and read 5 or 6 books of any subject, that would put you in the top 1 to 5% in the planet of that subject. If you took a year and read, 5 or 6 of the best books on any subject, it would automatically put you in the top 1 to 5% in the world on that particular subject. We can all do it. We can all do it. It's within all of our reach. Here's some final thoughts to ponder. Thoughts are things, my friends. So when we sow a thought, we reap an action. We sow an act, we reap a habit. And when we sow a habit, we reap a character. When we sow a character, you reap your destiny. And that's the great Ralph Waldo Emerson. So thanks for coming out. As always, what lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. Yes, that's you. Another Emerson gold bar. And of course, Einstein reminds us that the mind that opens to a new idea, possibilities, never comes back to its original size. So I hope your brain hurts from expanding and stretching today. I hope you choose to work smarter, not harder. And, embrace the idea to proactively change the way you look at things so that the things you look at change. And that is it for today, other than your final reminder of truth. Any questions, my friends? We got time. I know we ran a little past 12, but I would love to answer any questions y'all have or hear your thoughts.
I'm good, brother.
Awesome.
I'm good too. Thanks, Rance. This is good.
Sweet. I hope I didn't bore y'all today.
Hey, did you ever play with that bid sheet I ever sent you, buddy?
I have not yet because I hadn't had a project, but I'm working I'm going to use it on a project that we are working on for, it's a duplex, new construction duplex here in Poulsbo.
Brand new?
Yep. It's kind of interesting. It was a little parcel. They were going to put just a duplex on it, but then the munis and everybody's thankfully coming around. So they the landowner short platted this little lot. So now we're still going to be able to drop a duplex on there, but it'll be a 0 lot line like townhome.
Oh, okay.
So construction, it'll look like a duplex, like something you see on housing or whatever.
Yeah.
But it'll be 2 parcels, so you can sell them separately. So it's an equity play.
Yeah, there you go. Well, you split it up, get more bang for your buck.
Mm-hmm.
Buy 5 acres, split it up to half acres lots, and then instead of at 10,000 as acres, now 5 or 15,000 an acre.
That's right.
Or whatever.
Oh, show.
Or you save that, do it like that on taxes too. 5 acres, cut out a half acre, build a house on the half acre, only pay taxes on the house for the half acre, and the other fucking shit's all fucking farm exempt.
That's right. Yeah, that's a good point. I like it.
Yeah. And then after you do all that, whoever dies first is bury his ass on the property. Now you're tax free. You're done.
Because
you can never take it. It's a burial site.
There you go. That's hot. Good man.
Are y'all using metal studs or wood studs?
As far as I know, it'll be wood. Yeah. Just.
Have you looked into if it's cheaper to use metal studs? I think we get for our metal studs.
I don't know. I have to talk to him. My builder GC guy. He's super savvy in that. That's a good point though. Or at least maybe the perimeter walls or something. I'm curious if, what the plan is there. I'm not sure.
Yeah, because we do interior walls, studs, and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's that's beyond my expertise. The construction side for sure. But
Just make it happen.
Yeah, but thank you guys for coming out. It's good to see y'all. And I appreciate everybody's contribution and questions. Final couple questions for y'all, everybody to consider. Really good to see everybody. Appreciate it, and it's been great. I look forward to connecting with y'all, doing our one-on-ones, hopefully in the next few weeks. So don't be a stranger. We could take an hour or two, do a deep dive into whatever y'all are working on, and see what I can do to help you move towards your goals. But that's it for today, folks. Y'all take care. God bless, and thanks for hopping on. I'll talk to y'all soon.
See you. Everybody.